There are certain parts of adulthood that nobody prepares you for. Like you kind of know one day your parents will get older, but you don't really imagine what it feels like until you're smack in the middle of it. And let me tell you, it is weird. It's overwhelming. And it is one of the most complicated times you'll ever live, in my opinion. Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. Thanks for joining me on Perfectly Imperfect Me 365, where I talk about all things that are, well, perfectly imperfect. And for me, this topic hit full force with my own parents, starting when my father first was in the hospital. I cannot even count how many times he's been in and out of the hospital over the last year and a half. One time it was for heart surgery. The next it's a fall. Then the next it's his heart again. Then it's another fall. And the most recent time it was a medication interaction that landed him in the hospital for the entire month of July with a trip to the ICU in the middle of that stay. And here I am sitting there in the waiting room with my phone in my hand, and I'm trying to juggle my own life while also being his spokesperson, secretary, financial advisor, realtor, and sometimes, even his babysitter. It is absolutely so surreal to watch the person who once told me not to climb too high on the monkey bars now actually needing me and my siblings to remind him to use his walker. That role reversal nobody warned me about is the first thing that really shakes you. You go from, hey, mom and dad, can I have $20? To, hey guys, did you actually mean to pay $2,000 to that sketchy company that just cold called you? Because here's the thing. They still want control. They still want their own independence. And I don't want to strip them of that either. Because let's be honest, that's humiliating and it can cause a lot more fights than solutions. But the aftermath is brutal because I end up playing cleanup crew. For example, they might sign up for something online or over the phone, some random subscription or some membership that sounded good at the time or they thought they needed or were talked into doing. And then they'll call me later and ask, hey, do you know what that charge was for? And of course, I don't, and neither do they. And half the time, it's literally something that they didn't ever need. So guess who spends most of their afternoon calling customer service, canceling bank accounts, and begging for refunds from these companies? Yep, me. It has become like I am the family cleanup crew. No joke. And it's not just the money stuff. It's the house bills, the mail that's piling up, the medical paperwork. It's the duplicate payments that they made on their cars because they forgot that I set it up. And so they paid them again. Things that used to be so second nature for them now become like these complicated puzzles that I have to help solve. And honestly, it is exhausting. But here's the kicker, that up until recently, they actually didn't want that help. They still want to drive. They still want to manage their own money, and they still want to answer their own phone calls. And I get it. I really do. Because if somebody told me tomorrow that I couldn't make my own choices, I'd be freaking pissed too. But it's hard when the independence starts bumping up against safety. Like, I don't want to be the bad guy taking away their keys or saying no to things. I want them to both feel like they still have dignity. And I also don't want to spend the next 6 months untangling a financial mess or rushing back to the ER because they refuse to listen to the doctors, or maybe they misunderstood or misheard them. And here's the part that really wears on you, the constant worry. When my phone rings late at night, I immediately wonder, is this the hospital again? Is this my mom calling saying that my dad fell again? Is this the aide calling to say that they had to call a code in the hospital and get him to ICU? When I see a strange charge in their bank accounts, my stomach drops because I know I'm going to have to dig into it. When I watch them argue with me about needing help, there's this mix of sadness and anger that literally floods in. And then there is the guilt. The guilt that I got frustrated, guilt that sometimes I resent the time it's taking me, the guilt that I feel because I'm not always patient. And let's be honest, the guilt that I absolutely have because I reacted to them in a really hurtful way because I'm so frustrated. Because nobody wants to admit out loud that caring for their parents can feel like a burden and a full-time job, but it does, and it's human. So how do I balance it? Well, honestly, sometimes I don't. And some days I feel like I'm drowning. But here are some things that I have learned along this way in the last 6 months. The first one is that I absolutely have to set limits. I cannot answer every call or solve every single problem or be on high alert all the time in that moment. I also recognize that some things might be a high priority to them and it may not be a huge priority to the moment. So I have to balance that. I had to bring in help, literally, whether it's asking my siblings, the aides, or case managers, because I literally cannot do it all alone. I'm still working on learning to separate the business side from the parent side. Like, I don't know, once I've spent 2 hours canceling all those fraudulent subscriptions that God knows what goes to that, I have to remind myself they're still my parents. So we'll sit together, we'll laugh about some old family memory, might go through my progress reports when I was in high school or middle school, because let's just face it, it brings back a shit ton of memories about how I couldn't sit still. Because if I don't, then I'm only going to see them as a problem that needs to be managed. And the truth is that I need breaks. I need some time away. I need to recharge. I need to remember that I'm not just a caretaker. Because if I don't, that resentment builds up until I snap. And then I feel worse. And then I've made my mom and dad feel really bad. What's wild is that this whole process comes with grief, even before the actual loss, because the parent that you knew, the parent that I know, the one who could handle all their businesses, who was strong, who felt untouchable, that version starts to fade. And you're left balancing two truths at once. You love them and you're losing parts of them. And that grief sneaks up on you in the middle of an argument about car keys, or when you're filling out hospital paper for the third time this year, or you're now having to go back and dig and find out what they have just subscribed to, or look at the contracts that they've signed because they didn't know that it was a contract that is getting them into a deal that they don't actually need. So yeah, this chapter of life is no joke. It's complicated. It's heavy. It tests your patience and your love in ways that you don't even expect. And I think what I've learned is this, that I cannot do it perfectly. I can't prevent every mistake. I cannot prevent my parents from everything. I cannot prevent my dad from falling if he falls in the shower, or if he doesn't listen to the aid, or if he doesn't use the walker. I cannot prevent my mom from double paying things, but I can show up. I can do my best. And I can remind myself that taking care of them doesn't mean sacrificing myself completely. And if you're listening to this and you're nodding your head because you're also in the trenches of parenting your parents, just know you're not alone. You're not failing. You're just navigating one of the hardest, messiest, most human transitions there is. Thanks for sticking with me through this one. I know it is not easy. And if you're carrying the weight of caring for your parent right now, I see you. Take care of yourself too, because you cannot show up for them if you're completely drained. If this episode made you feel less alone, please share it with somebody else who might be in the same boat. And whatever you do, just remember you are being your perfectly imperfect self, and that is awesome. Thanks for joining me. I am Rachel, and remember that this podcast is not for therapeutic purposes. It is for educational and support only. Have a great day.